Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's session. We are honored to have the opportunity to share our presentation on open access and how we've worked with our partners in Taiwan to support open access locally. My name is James Picken, and I work in Open Science Solutions here at Elsevier. Open access and open science are fascinating areas that I feel fortunate to work in. So I'm very pleased to have been asked to speak on this topic today. I've only had the privilege of visiting your beautiful country once, and I sincerely wish I could have been there to deliver this presentation in person. But my hope is that this virtual recording from a dark and rainy London will convey our enthusiasm for open access nonetheless. The session will consist of 4 sections. I'll start with an introduction of Elsevier, who we are and what we do, and then I'll dig deeper into our core business and share a sense of our publishing profile. After that, we'll look into open access agreements specifically, including a few examples of different agreements we currently have in place. And then finally, I'll go into detail about how we've worked with our agreement partners in Taiwan to forge a pathway towards open access. I'd like to start with Elsevier's mission, which is to help researchers and healthcare professionals to do their work, which is advancing science and improving health outcomes for the benefit of society. That means we need to make sure they have easy access to relevant content. We have to make sure they can trust that content. And to do that, we facilitate high quality levels of peer review and make new content available as quickly as possible. As it has for so many, the COVID pandemic has brought a lot into focus. To give just 2 examples, BioNTech Pfizer began the work on the COVID vaccine after Dr. Shaheen had read an article in The Lancet. And here in the picture, you see the chief medical advisor to the President of the United States during a hearing on the coronavirus response in the US Congress, where he is waving a Cell Press article. The pandemic has made so incredibly clear the importance of science and health research, but also to make sure researchers worldwide collaborate and have quick and easy access to new discoveries. So these examples made us here at Elsevier really proud, but also grateful, because this is what we do. But clearly, there are still so many challenges ahead of us, where we need to support researchers and health practitioners to do their work. Poverty, global health, climate change, and many more. At Elsevier, our role is to support them and you. So now moving on to publishing. In this section, I'll cover publishing as a service, Elsevier's publishing profile, and various publishing initiatives and programs that we have in place. This slide provides an overview of the various stages of the publishing process, from submission through to publication and ultimately preservation. As a publisher, we need to add value at each stage of the process, whether it's managing over 2.5 million submissions annually, recruiting and overseeing a network of editors, editorial board members, and peer reviewers, providing the technology and platforms to support article production, or making articles available to a global audience. We also ensure articles are archived in perpetuity, so there's a permanent record of scholarship. Of course, you know Elsevier as a publisher, and the pace of research and knowledge creation is accelerating. Our journal portfolio consists of over 2,700 peer-reviewed journal brands. In addition, we publish over 43,000 book titles, including iconic works such as Gray's Anatomy. Since the year 2000, almost all Nobel laureates have published in Elsevier journals. And last year, we published more than 600,000 peer-reviewed articles. That's nearly 90% more than a decade ago. Every month, more than 18 million users visit Science Direct, and in 2021 alone, more than 1.6 billion articles were downloaded. There are two main routes for publishers to recoup the costs of publishing: pay to read and pay to publish. The first one, pay to read, is the subscription model. Under the pay to read model, the cost of publication is covered by readers, typically in the form of subscriptions. This way, the cost of publishing articles is spread across typically thousands of institutional and individual subscribers who pay to receive access. Articles published under the subscription model in subscription journals and hybrid journals are supported by the pay-to-read model. The second one, pay-to-publish, is the gold open access model. In the case of pay-to-publish, individuals or institutions pay an APC, or article publication charge, upfront in order to cover the cost of publishing. These articles are made immediately and permanently available to the rest of the world upon publication. Readers do not pay a subscription to access these articles. Open access articles in hybrid journals and full open access journals are supported by the pay-to-publish model. This brings us nicely on to the perennial question around double dipping. Many traditional publishers, including Elsevier, are sometimes accused of double dipping. The term double dipping is used where publishers charge an APC for an article as well as a charge for reading that same article. At Elsevier, we have a strict no double dipping policy, and we do not charge subscribers for open access articles. When calculating subscription prices, we only take into account subscription articles. Concerns around double dipping are often premised on the expectation that open access articles are replacing the number of subscription articles being published, and therefore that subscription prices should be changing to correspond to this. At Elsevier, both subscription and open access articles continue to grow. To ensure we uphold our no double dipping policy, separate calculations regarding list prices for open access titles. As a rule, we do not offer authors the option to make subscription articles gold open access retrospectively after publication. That said, we appreciate that there are sometimes exceptional circumstances, and we want to assist authors where possible. In such instances, authors can make a subscription article published in a hybrid journal gold open access up to the 31st of January of the following year. So, for example, if an article is published in March 2022, the author can make it open access up until the 31st of January 2023. This cutoff date is necessary to accurately assess the open access uptake in each individual hybrid journal for the previous year, which ensures we do not charge subscribers for open access content. This slide shows in chart form how article submissions, as well as published articles, have grown over the last decade or so. While submissions have grown at 11% on average over the last 10 years, there was a significant spike during the pandemic. And while the number of articles that we published has also grown, this is at a slower rate as we maintain our rigorous editorial standards to ensure only high-quality research is published in our journals. Looking specifically at our open access portfolio and publications, as one of the world's leading open access publishers, over 2,700 of our journals publish open access articles, including over 600 fully gold open access titles. We published nearly 120,000 open access articles last year alone, which is an increase of 46% over the previous year. There are over 1.4 million open access articles on Science Direct, and we also have 140 open archive journals, which open up subscription content after a time lapse. This includes the Cell Press portfolio. The chart at the top right shows the continued growth in subscription articles that I mentioned on the no double dipping slides a couple of minutes ago. Also, a couple of slides ago, I alluded to maintaining article quality. This slide demonstrates that for Elsevier, despite publishing more articles, our quality is not being compromised, and in fact, continues to increase. On quality in a bit more detail, although Elsevier publishes 18% of articles globally, our quality is demonstrated by the fact that we publish up to 36% of articles in the highest quality tiers. And as we move up those tiers, Elsevier's quality share increases. In most cases, quality and fee are correlated to one another. However, at Elsevier, while the quality of the research we publish is well above the industry average, we ensure our prices remain competitive. So article publishing charges and usage are priced below the industry average. The first two of these charts compare quality along the x-axis and APC along the y-axis. And the third chart shows our quality versus subscription article content usage, and once again shows that significant usage of our content on Science Direct leads to strong pricing metrics for our customers. We aim to be as transparent as possible in what we do. For authors, we provide the prices for publishing open access on each journal homepage, as well as on a price list accessible on elsevier.com. We automatically inform authors who are entitled to free or discounted open access charges based on an agreement their affiliation has with Elsevier. And we automatically notify authors who are entitled to free or low-cost access and publishing due to being from low or middle-income countries. For librarians, we provide a range of information on our website about our pricing competitiveness, how our pricing corresponds to quality, and publishing model uptake across subscription and open access. We publicly announce significant agreements, including our open access pilots. We provide a list of our journal subscription prices, and we describe the process we follow to calculate list prices. We also describe the process to ensure we don't double dip, as I explained earlier. We show the number of articles that are published Gold Open Access and the number which are financed through subscriptions on each journal homepage to allow librarians to validate this. We have programs in place outside of our traditional segments that support communities that have specific needs but may not otherwise be able to access research. The Patient Access Program provides access to health and medical research content to patients and caregivers at no cost to them. We support researchers in 120 low and middle income countries with low cost or free access to research, as well as Scopus, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And during times of existential crisis, we set up resource centers, providing relevant research for free. Most recent examples of this are the Coronavirus Resource Center and Access for Ukrainian Researchers. We continuously improve how we support researchers, authors, reviewers, and editors with tools and platforms to make processes more efficient. We support editor decision-making on which manuscript submissions to accept, to transfer, or to reject, and how to provide feedback to authors to improve manuscripts. We help authors find and choose journals most suitable for their submission with an elegant submission process, guiding the author to provide the right content at the right time and in the right way. We also help authors of articles that are not accepted in their first choice of journal to reach their publication goals through an article transfer service, and to provide control to peer reviewers so they can manage their preferences and invitations. In addition, we support research reproducibility and integrity through initiatives that help identify and reduce intentional and unintentional ethical practices. And we integrate author services that help authors understand their publishing options for open access. On open access, we've developed market-leading platforms to support our open access agreement implementations. For institutions, we have the Elsevier Open Access platform, which supports management and tracking of our agreements. For authors, our author workflow is simple and intuitive to follow, presenting publishing options based on their affiliation. We consistently hear that our open access platforms are some of the most appreciated in the market. Our flagship researcher-facing platform is ScienceDirect, which was first launched back in 1997, 25 years ago, although it did take an additional 2 years to launch commercially. It contains all Elsevier published journal articles for nearly 200 years, including the first Lancet article published back in 1823. In addition to journals, ScienceDirect also hosts 43,000 book titles, including major reference works and book series. It has evolved significantly over 2 decades to provide the best-in-class user experience, making articles quick and easy to find, as well as helping researchers quickly assess if an article is suitable and relevant for their research without having to read the full article. Users' reading history is recorded so that it's not lost over time. And most recently, a content syndication pilot was launched, where ScienceDirect, in addition to Elsevier content, also hosts content from other major publishers, including Wiley and Taylor & Francis. Now onto the overview of transformative agreements, where I'll cover the types of open access agreement. I'll provide an overview of Elsevier's open access agreements. We'll drill down into some specific examples and also share some observations and learnings. But before I go into our open access agreements in more detail, here's a quick timeline of Elsevier's open access journey. It starts in 2002, when we were a founding member of Research for Life, which provides affordable access to research for low and middle income countries. Soon after, in 2004, we updated our policies to allow all authors to post a free copy of their article in their repository, as well as making some journals open archive. Skipping forward to 2009, we launched our first fully gold open access journal. And 4 years later, we gave authors options to publish open access across the majority of our subscription journal portfolio. We launched our first transformative agreement in 2016 in the Netherlands, which opened the floodgates for open access agreements, reaching many across the globe each year since 2019. And as mentioned previously, we now have over 600 fully gold open access journals and over 2,700 of our journals that accept open access articles. So why do we do transformative agreements? Transformative agreements are a mechanism that allows us to support customers who have an open access mandate by making their spend go further by providing both reading and publishing under one agreement. They provide authors funder-compliant routes to open access publishing. The charts on the right provide a sense of where open access policies sit around the world. As you can see, the vast majority are in Europe with 463. I think there's actually now more. Then comes the US with 198 policies, followed by Oceania and Southeast Asia. There are two main types of gold open access agreement. On the left side, you see here transformative agreements, which I referred to on the previous slide. These are where typically a single fee is paid for both publishing and reading. A number of APCs are included in the fee, meaning authors can publish open access without having to pay the APC themselves. The other main type of gold open access agreement is an APC discount agreement. This is where a traditional reading or subscription type agreement continues. However, to incentivize authors to publish open access, a discount is applied to the APC, making it cheaper. While we have open access agreements globally, Europe is very much at the epicenter of the movement, with the majority of agreements being transformative agreements or agreements with an open access discount. In Europe, there are the most in number of open access agreements, the greatest in size, and being the forerunners, the highest level of complexity. We have over 40 open access agreements across 26 countries, benefiting authors at over 2,000 institutions. Of these, 23 are transformative agreements across 21 countries, and 14 are open access discount agreements. There are different flavors between markets as each pilot is tailored to individual needs. These are some examples of the agreements that have been reached with our agreement partners. We reached an innovative agreement in Spain, which started in 2021. It covers around 70 Spanish institutions from across the country. This was a result of bringing together several sub-consortia and buying groups that didn't necessarily have close relationships with one another. Because of a relatively low open access output prior to the agreement being in place, it was agreed with the group that the way to ensure a sustainable path to open access was to scale up over time. Together with representatives from the consortium, we worked and continue to work to educate researchers on open access and build their confidence in making their publishing choices. In most cases, there's a central pool of APCs for the whole country or whole consortium group to use on a first-come, first-served basis. But in Ireland, the preference was to distribute APCs among participating institutions to ensure equity. While this provides equity, it can present internal challenges regarding the distribution of APCs and what happens if some institutions use up their quota while others have a quota remaining outstanding at the end of the year. In California, we've implemented a novel funding mechanism known as a multi-payer model. This is where the agreement covers part of the APC and the author claims the remainder from their funder. Agreement constructs have evolved over time, and our learnings along the way support developing new future constructs that work most efficiently for our agreement partners. We hold monthly meetings with each of our customers to help them understand the success of their agreement and how author behavior is changing in terms of open access publishing. If institutions' objectives aren't being met, we tweak the implementation setup in order to ensure they are successful. Before I give an example of an open access agreement, an open science agreement, it's helpful to provide some context around what open science is. Publishing gold open access using the pay-to-publish model or making an article openly available through other means are some, but not all of the ways to advance open science. Open science is a set of principles used to conduct, publish, and disseminate research in a more collaborative, inclusive, and transparent way. In other words, it's a way of working that promotes openness. Some examples of other elements of open science, distinct from open access, are open data, open methods, open metrics, as well as efforts to bring science into society. Some of you may have heard about our agreement in the Netherlands, which goes beyond just open access and supports the Netherlands' open science ambitions more broadly. To support the Netherlands' open science ambitions, we are piloting several services, 4 of which you can see listed here at the bottom right. Data Monitor allows institutions to locate and connect datasets to their authors' research outputs. It also supports a feed to their CRIS system. Grant Monitor supports retrieving awarded grant information from relevant funders, and we allocate which grant belongs to which institutions. This information is also fed through to their CRIS systems. The UMC portal is a portal that aggregates research outputs from a group of hospitals and showcases this through a community portal. And then finally, Telescope. Telescope supports reproducibility through linking research infrastructure to research output. It also supports measuring return on investment on these often very expensive pieces of hardware. Transformative agreements are complex, in part because they're a new model and it takes time and patience to get one's head around. From the agreements we've reached to date, there are some key principles that are common across all successful agreements. I won't read out the full list as I think the idea is clear. In order to achieve success, we need to work together, to be patient, and manage expectations, as author behavior doesn't change overnight. Up until recently, we've typically expected negotiations to last around a year. However, that timeline is shortening. And there are scenarios where, with strong commitment from all sides, we've been able to close agreements in just a few months. So as I said before, we now have transformative agreements in place supporting authors at over 2,000 institutions worldwide. We're still learning, as we all are, but we've gained a lot of experience along the way. We use these learnings to build better, more sustainable agreement types for our customers into the future. So these are a few additional learnings from the agreements that we've reached over the last few years. I've referred to collaboration earlier. For gold open access to be successful, publishers, funders, and institutions need to work together in order to support the transition. Changing author behavior takes time. Authors need to feel confident about publishing open access, so good communication is key. Spend reallocation is complex. Funds for reading and funds for publishing don't necessarily come from the same place. In some countries, they've made recommendations that there should be changes in the way that libraries are funded in order to better support open access publishing. And finally, different countries and different regions are moving towards open access at different speeds. The appetite for open access varies significantly across the globe. Here you can see how open access is happening at different rates. And despite Europe leading the way, authors still show a balanced preference between subscription and open access. And globally, open access is still at just around 30% of global output. The US is currently at 26% open access. This is partly because there hasn't been a coherent national policy in place, and partly because some groups see open access as a cost reduction mechanism, which in reality it isn't. However, you may have heard about the change in policy from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy over the summer, which will likely lead to an acceleration of open access in the US over the coming years. In Asia Pacific, open access is at 28%, so further ahead than in the US, but still a relatively small percentage. This is due to widely differing open access policies and also differing funding situations and challenges. While Europe is leading in the transition, there is still strong author preference to publish subscription. And within many European countries, funding flows remain a challenge. There needs to be a fundamental shift in order to reallocate funds to institutions which are more highly research intensive. And the rest of the world also experience significant funding challenges. To use just one example, in Brazil, PhD researchers get funding of $3,000 to $5,000 per year for everything. This has to cover their research, their equipment, labs, and much more. So obviously, this isn't enough to cover APCs on top of all of those other expenses. To compound this challenge, Brazilian research projects can only use funds for one APC every 12 months. So now coming on to Taiwan. We've been in discussions with Taiwan regarding an open access agreement since December 2021, with formal negotiations starting once we shared our first proposal in June this year. In the next couple of slides, I'll dig into the process we followed to get to where we are today. At a high level, we observed that Taiwan's research output is growing overall at 4% per year, but much more steeply in gold and hybrid open access. The first challenge we came up against was the huge diversity of publication profiles within the concert members. With over 100 members ranging from highly research-intensive institutions to those that produce little output, we needed to develop options that could work for everyone. This bubble chart represents the different profiles. The y-axis shows the growth of open access output between 2017 and 2021. And the x-axis shows the percentage of output that was open access for each institution in 2021. The bubble size represents the number of articles. So you can see that with this range of profiles, it was essential for us to support members across a broad spectrum. But before any of that, the first thing we needed to do was to understand Taiwan's open access needs and ambitions. What I'm showing here is the high-level process that took place in order to get to where we are today. There were 4 key phases. Understanding Taiwan's needs, analysis of the publishing profile, collaboration to establish a set of options, and then agreement and implementation. In order to understand Taiwan's open access needs, we held a series of meetings that we call needs analysis meetings. The first meeting with the Concert Task Force members was held in December 2021. Although before that, there was a pre-meeting with STPI in the September prior in order to exchange ideas and perspectives with regards to Taiwan's open access development on a national level. In this meeting, we discussed the open access survey that STPI conducted in 2020, and agreed on key insights and how these would inform discussions going forward. During these meetings, our aim was to understand where the need for open access was coming from. Was it coming from authors, institutions, funders, or mandates from elsewhere? What type of open access was preferred? Was it gold, green, diamond? And if it was gold, would a discount agreement be sufficient? Or would we need to consider a read and publish transformative type agreement? There were meetings held every 2 to 3 months, together with STPI and the Concert Task Force in order to navigate this. And through these meetings, we worked through the different needs in order to gain a deep understanding to a level where Taiwan's needs and requirements were clearly understood. On the Elsevier side, we shared information on open access publishing models, Elsevier in the publishing ecosystem, our bespoke test and learn approach, as well as examples of agreements with open access components that we'd recently reached. We then moved on to dissecting Taiwan's publishing profile. To do this, we looked at the publishing profile over the last 5 years. During this exercise, we observed the varied profiles I mentioned earlier. Some had very high open access uptake, while others had a low open access profile. Some were growing in open access very quickly, whilst others weren't displaying much growth at all. We then combined these findings together with some of the key insights on the 2020 Open Access Survey that STPI conducted, as well as addressing concerns raised about double dipping to reach the complete impact profile. Equipped with this foundational information, we were then in a position to move ahead with establishing a set of open access options to support concert members' requirements. We wanted to be able to support all members with open access options, whilst recognizing that some were far more progressed in their open access journey than others. It was also important to provide pricing options to accommodate different budgets and differing priorities among members. The result was a set of 6 options to support those who preferred an open access discount agreement, as well as those who wanted to move onto a read and publish agreement with a quota of APCs included. Within these 2 options, there were 3 tiers based on each institution's read and publish profile. Between June and September, finalized proposal options with STPI and the Concert Task Force. We're pleased that the open access options were accepted in late October. The 3-year proposals take effect from January 2023 and is the first national agreement in Taiwan to address concert's objective for a phased and sustainable transition to open access, offering incentives to support open access publishing across Elsevier journals, alongside continued research access for research from concert-affiliated institutions. The current status is that concert members are currently choosing which option they would like to go with. We expect to have each member's choice by the end of November, and soon after, we will be progressing with arranging training sessions on the Elsevier Open Access platform for librarians and administrators and setting up their accounts. We will also be setting up an agreement page on elsevier.com, which guides authors, helping them to understand their eligibility for the agreement, as well as including a journal search tool where authors can find out which journals are covered by the agreement. From January the 1st, 2023, authors affiliated to concert members will be able to publish open access under the agreement. We'll set up regular meetings with the agreement administrators to support onboarding and help the consortium and members understand the agreement performance and ensure it is a success. And on that positive note, I've come to the end of the presentation. I do hope it was interesting and helpful. We here at Elsevier look forward to continuing to work with our agreement partners in Taiwan as we navigate this journey together in partnership. Wishing you all the very best. Thank you.